Hello and welcome back to another episode of the It's Not Orange podcast. After Saturday's win at Bloomfield Road against high-flying Huddersfield, we was all looking forward to Tuesday, and then it brought us all back down to earth with an absolutely disgraceful display from the Seasiders as they fell to a 2-0 defeat. A win and defeat in the last two games, and we head to Plymouth, who are without a win yet, but we'll be hoping to get 3 points on Saturday. And of course, if they play anywhere near as good as Mansfield and we turn up like we did, it was going to be a very difficult game. But helping us preview that game alongside me and Martin is our guest, John. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
No, you're most welcome, mate, and thank you for joining us. It's probably not a blockbuster, but if the words or the phrase must win comes to anyone's mind, it's probably this early on in the season for both clubs, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know, if I like the use of the term "must win" in August, and I think whatever the result, I'm not going to sort of give up on the hope that we might dig ourselves out of this early season hole we're in. But yeah, I think it's a strange one. I think a few weeks ago when you looked at this fixture, it seemed pretty mouthwatering right before the start of the season. You've got a team coming down from the Championship and feeling, I think, quietly optimistic about the new season. Not all fans were optimistic about it heading in, but I certainly was more optimistic than the results so far would have suggested. And obviously you guys have done a lot of very eye-catching business to add to a team that only just missed out on the playoffs last time around. So you'd think it would be a sort of early, maybe not quite top of the table clash, but an early clash between two pretty serious teams. And as it is, you guys have, I think, had a pretty poor start, and we have been even worse. The squad looks pretty threadbare, a result partially of injuries, but also partially of the fact we haven't got certain key positions done in terms of recruitment. I think we'll come on to discuss that in a bit. And we just haven't, we've sort of by turns looked unbelievably porous defensively. And then when we sort of have games where the defense is relatively solid, we, don't have anything going forward. So we don't seem to be able to marry together those two sort of parts of the game so far. And the reaction on Tuesday night at Home Park after we lost to Leyton Orient was certainly the most toxic atmosphere I've heard inside Home Park in quite a few years. I don't go to every home game, so I'm typically based in London. But it was, certainly from my personal experience, probably we have to go back 15 years or so to a previous relegation from the Championship to hear anything that voluble. So yeah, it feels like again, if not a must-win, then a very big game, obviously, for you guys to sort of properly kickstart your season and for us to just try and get something on the board. I think if we don't, you're going to hear very unhappy sounds inside the ground at full-time again.
Yeah, I was just going to touch upon that. Like when you don't go to games consistently, and you probably go back after being quite fairly excited, of course, if you don't go too often to go back to your home team stadium, of course, and then you experience something like that, it's sometimes not sort of wallpaper, is it? It's kind of like a fresh pair of eyes to say, wow, is this really the feeling around the club at the moment? Slash, is it an overreaction, or is it just typical football fans? How did it feel on Tuesday? Was it like not the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, but was it getting to the point where you can feel that anger and frustration building up?
Yeah, definitely. And I've been to probably more home games than I normally would over the last couple of years. I've tried to make an effort to go back while we were in the Championship. And, I travel away most weeks, if not every single away game, which is obviously a different, sort of type of support away from home. But I'd say that on the whole, certainly at home, our form there, even in, Championship relegation season last year and a close relegation season the year before was pretty good, which obviously kept a lot of the home fans on side. And some of those games in the Championship, we really got the place absolutely rocking. The the Barnsley game, I should say, on the opening day of the season, I went to that as well. And it was really, really loud. When the teams came out, there was no sense that, our fans are not turning up in League One or they weren't up for League One. It was, it was an absolute bear pit in there at the beginning. And I think we lost that game 3-1, but there wasn't a ton of sort of negative reaction at full time because it was a completely insane game that really could have gone either way. We made 3 of the worst defensive mistakes you're ever likely to see in one game. Otherwise, I think we probably had the better of it. There were some controversial refereeing decisions, but the 2 away performances in between times, 2 more defeats, and people have really, started to turn, I think, a little bit on the general situation, I think it would be wrong, and we're going to discuss the manager in a minute, but I think it'd be wrong to say that people are turning on the manager just yet. I think there's a sense among many fans that the players we've signed aren't good enough, but I don't think it's like they're being turned on. So there were certainly howls of frustration at passes, going astray and poor touches on Tuesday night. But, I think equally a couple of the players who came over who were perceived to have done well got rounds of applause. Seems really just kind of aimed at the kind of abstract situation, and also the board, the chairman, the loud chants of "Where's the money gone?", which is a reference to the fact that, rightly or wrongly, a lot of fans came to expect that we were going to have, the chairman said we were going to have a top 6 budget this season, and that hasn't massively been in evidence in the transfer business that we've done. We have brought in a lot of players, but after selling players for quite large fees in the last 6 months, we haven't really seemed to have paid out a big fee for really anyone. So the perception is kind of misaligned with what the expectation management was. We haven't signed a striker at all really yet. A couple of young strikers have come in, but the sort of big target that we're looking for up front hasn't come in. So there was the frustration with that. I think it's unfortunate for the players who are young, and you can really see that some of them, their confidence is just absolutely through the floor at the minute, because this sort of scale of backlash isn't against them in particular. It's not against the manager in particular. It's really, I think, it's been 2 seasons, in the Championship where we've wanted to go for a long time. I don't think anyone was under any illusions that it was going to be easy. At the same time, it is 2 years of losing most weeks, certainly away from home, getting absolutely pasted pretty much every week under Rooney last season in particular. But across all of our managers, we had very little success away. Again, much better at home, as I said, but still, not amazing. And I think we came down to this league, and people really felt that we were going to give it a good go and try and bounce straight back up. At the moment, that's not in evidence. Personally, I think it's very early days, and we'll probably come on to that a bit more later. But I think it's people who are frustrated with the situation, and unfortunately, it's the team that are sort of on the immediate receiving end of it, even if, as I said, it's not exactly aimed at them.
Tom Cleverley obviously was appointed in the summer. It had the usual Watford treatment, which everyone who ever manages Watford gets. So he's had a baptism of fire there, hasn't he? But how was he viewed? How was he perceived? Was it seen as a gamble? Was it exciting? What were the general thoughts then when he was appointed? And it's harsh, isn't it, after four or 5 games? But what's the feeling then and now?
Yeah, well, we were coming off the back of 3 very sort of random managerial appointments since Steven Schumacher, who took us up from League One in the 22-23 season with 101 points. He then walked out to go to Stoke a few months into our Championship tenure. We then got in Ian Foster, who was a former England sort of youth setup coach who no one had heard of really, among the fan base. He had a pre-existing relationship with our then sort of head of football, so that made some sense at least, but it was not a name that was kind of out there at the beginning of the process. We then sacked him, went into the new season, appointed Wayne Rooney, which I think it's safe to say no one saw coming, given his record at Birmingham, and turned out to be as much of a disaster as the naysayers said it would be. And then, in January, he gets sacked in late December, and in January, we appoint Miron Muslic, the former manager of Cercle Bruges in Belgium, who, again, no one had heard of, really. And that was after feverish social media speculation that Schumacher, who by that point had been sacked by Stoke, was coming back. So, it really looked like that was a done deal. I think the betting went down to 1-16, and then suddenly Fabrizio Romano is tweeting about us, which is a very new experience for Argyle fans. Doesn't happen too often. So, and then this Muslic guy comes in, and he did well, but then couldn't quite keep us up and got poached by Schalke, which is again, pretty amazing thing to happen to a club like Argyle. And so I think there was a sense among certainly me and the fans that I talked to, but I think more broadly, that this is not the time to take another stupid risk or appoint someone totally out of left field. We should just be looking at kind of obvious options. And I think Cleverley was that. I think his name was getting put around by a lot of lower league pundits as meriting, at least a top end League One job, if not a Championship job, based on what he did at Watford. Obviously taking a team that were predicted by some of the lower league pundits to go down last year. They had a bit of a topsy-turvy season, started very well, finished very poorly. I think some critics might argue the underlying numbers were not amazing for the entire season, but they finished, comfortably in mid-table and had some really good-looking performances in that time. And I think on top of that, in a challenging situation, as you alluded to at Watford, he seemed to acquit himself very well. The fans seemed gutted when he was when they parted ways with him, and all of the reaction from them when we hired him was look after him, he's done a great job here, and we're sad he's gone. So I think there was a sense that it was a kind of obvious appointment. It made sense. It was kind of a coup, I think that there's certainly, I think he certainly might have got a championship job if he'd waited a bit longer for one. And it felt like, after Muslic left, it was going to be, it was sort of a statement appointment for a strong season. I think also among the sorts of fans who, let's just say Muslic's football was very direct, which I think in a championship relegation battle is fine. I personally also quite like direct football. I'm a bit of an outlier in the modern day and age on that front. But it was really quite long ball, keep it, pump it up there. And then, a lot of reliance on physicality in the final third. Cleverly, I think, has a much more sort of on the floor, progressive passing style. And I think some of our fans were attracted to that too. Obviously 4 defeats in, it's the worst possible start he could have had. I think that I don't think anyone is really blaming him for that as even in the top 2 or 3 reasons. I think there's a widespread sense that, the transfer budget that maybe he was promised he hasn't had, or at the very least, certain players who he really needs to come in, he hasn't had. There have been injuries. The defending has been so shocking at times that it's not really defensive errors that come from tactical things. It's defensive errors that are coming from just stupid individual mistakes. So I think there's a sympathy with him, and I don't think anyone is turning on him just yet. That being said, I think there are grounds to criticise him so far. I don't think, if you lose 4 games in a row, the manager is going to have to take some of the responsibility for that, regardless of what else is going on. I think there's been criticism of some of the substitutions in certain games. And certainly on Tuesday night, we started well against Orient, and that has actually been a common theme across all 4 of the games. Is we started quite well in each of them, albeit not creating necessarily a huge amount. And then in the other 3 games, conceded a very early goal, and suddenly you're on the back foot. Well, Tuesday we went into halftime at 0-0, conceded the first goal nonetheless, and after that we were very, very passive. He didn't have a ton of options on the bench, but you sort of want to see a bit more tactical flexibility to try and change the game when your repeated patterns of attack are just comfortably getting contained. And I think maybe there's been a lack of flexibility there so far, slightly in evidence. There are some suggestions as well that this squad would much better suit a 3 at the back rather than a 4 at the back. He seems determined to play with a 4. Personally, I think asking a manager to throw out the formation they've spent the entire preseason coaching after 4 games is premature, and I understand why he doesn't want to do that. So I think there's definitely the jury is out a little bit in those senses, but I think I don't think anyone is thinking that he is sort of at the root of the problem here.
I wanted to touch a little bit on your transfer window again. I said pre-pod that I watched your show last night, and there seems to be obviously a massive amount of frustrations other than the signing you've just recently made this evening, obviously a centre-back, which we'll come on to now, I suppose. But a few decent signings, but a few maybe unknown signings, notably from your rivals, so to speak. Caleb Watts, they weren't happy, obviously, signed for Plymouth. I'm a fan of his, mainly in the attacking midfield, but I understand he was using a deeper lying role on Tuesday. Maybe because there wasn't many options there from what I understand, but he's an exciting player. And when I watched the highlights against Barnsley, he looked like a tremendous outlet, and he had many chances that he probably should have scored on top of the goal that he did.
Yeah, I think he looks the most exciting of the signings so far, in my opinion. Represents himself really well on the pitch as well. Clearly a really hard-working player and very thoughtful to listen to off it as well. But signed as an attacking midfielder, obviously, as you mentioned, came down from Exeter on a free, which was quite a nice statement of intent coming down into this league. And then I think really just a few days after the end of the season, getting that one over the line sort of was a kind of statement. We're going to come down and nick other teams' best players, and especially when it's your local rivals, that's very pleasing. Hasn't exactly panned out that way since then necessarily, but he's played already in 4 games in the 9, in the 10, and in the sort of 4/8. We went into the season, as has been mentioned, without an established striker, and what's so it looked on the opening day like we were going to have to play either Owen Asedi, who came in from St Mirren, or Bim Pepple, who came in from Luton, but way down the Luton pecking order. Both players who I think do have something about them, definitely, but they're both young, raw, learning, and so cleverly obviously decided to start the season with Watts up front. And I think, for all the talk going into that opening game against Barnsley being about the fact we haven't signed a number 9 and what a disaster that is, that was the least of our worries. It turned out the defending was shocking, and Watts had an absolutely brilliant game, scored a good goal, had a goal that I thought probably should have been allowed to stand, chalked off in like the 10th minute or maybe even earlier for an alleged foul, which if that's given, could be a completely different game. Put himself about. Was it? I don't think it was a foul, and if you're going to give that one, then there's a blatant shove on one of our players in the build up to their second goal that should be given. So, and I think that's a foul, whichever way you go on the first one. So anyway, a little bit unlucky, I think, in that sense. Since then he's sort of signed as a 10 more so. But on Tuesday night, we played him a little bit further back, and I think he looked good there. He didn't have a great game, but I think that was more about just sort of his, pass placement, and it just wasn't his night. I don't think it was really anyone's night. It didn't look like he was sort of tactically inept in that position. He looked like, he's able to sort of actually get on the ball and sort of play us forward a bit. Whereas the other players we've signed in that position of defensive midfielder players who I think are better at breaking up play and their sort of ball play subsequently isn't so good. So, he's a good one. We signed Bradley Ibrahim, I think, from Hertha Berlin. He'd been at Crawley on loan last year, young midfielder. He's not done amazingly so far. I think there's a bit of frustration with him. He's also been booked in pretty much every game he's played. But I think he's got some promise. Xavier Amici came in from Magdeburg. He's a sort of winger who is flattered to deceive a bit so far. But again, this is in the context of a team where no one's really done great. And he did have an amazing 10 minutes at Lincoln on Saturday where we were 3-0 down. And he created a goal with a lovely pass and then scored one with a fantastic left-footed finish from a really tight angle. So he's definitely got something about him. But yeah, and then we've also signed probably the best one actually, apart from what's Eamon Benarous from Bristol City. He's a player who basically was injured for 3 straight years and didn't play a game. You can tell how good he must be to not play for 3 years and only move down 1 division. So there is a worry about his legs just going again. But so far we've got a couple of games out of him, and he looks the best technical player on the park in all of them by a long shot. He is a midfielder, but we're playing him at left back due to an injury crisis, and he looks completely natural there. As he's just sort of one step ahead of the wingers. Great at sort of reading play, intercepting the ball, passing is excellent. So there are some players to get excited about, and I think there's been some very harsh commentary about the overall recruitment. That we haven't signed anyone good, or these are all League 2 players. I don't agree with that. That being said, at the moment the striking burden is being, as I mentioned, borne by 2 players who were not signed to start the season. We have not managed to sign any other strikers, partially thanks to you guys nicking Dale Taylor off us after a protracted will he or won't he sign. We had Ramon Burrell seemingly ready to go from Burton. He went to QPR instead. I think there's an element of naivety about some of this maybe, but also, if reports are to be believed, Taylor would prefer to sort of move to your part of the world than ours. It's not something we can really do anything about. Burrell went to the Championship above us. Sounds like we just kind of got scooped at the last minute on that one, which you can't do a ton about. There is now a rumour that a striker is imminent. We don't know who that is, but hopefully that will actually happen either before the weekend or just after. Defensively, we have made some improvements since the early games of the season. Alfie Mitchell came in on loan from Charlton, who seemed to play about half the time in their promotion season last year. He looked like a League One centre-back, which is what we've been missing, not always necessarily finding his players with the balls forward, but at least getting it clear from from his own box, which we were just not even doing that in the previous games this season. And then today we've signed Matthias Ross as a Danish centre-back who was on the books at Galatasaray for the last 3 years, but albeit didn't play for them really at all. And seemingly we've beaten off some Championship opposition to get him in. He won't play on Saturday because he's not had a pre-season and is not deemed to be match ready, but he presumably will get integrated. So there are signs, that it's taken too long to kind of get the squad up to full capacity after we lost pretty much our entire squad over the summer. And I personally am not surprised really that there are, a totally new squad and new manager is taking time to gel, which is why I'm probably not panicking quite as much as some others. But certainly we need a few more before the window closes, certainly in the striker department and probably another midfielder as well. So it's going to be an interesting final 10 days or so of the window.
Sean has asked, how do you feel about losing Hardy? I know it was a while ago now, but it didn't really work out for Hardy with Blackpool. I don't say I like to say I called it, but he looked like a proper striker for Blackpool and did play. There was a couple of chances against Doncaster under Neil Critchley where he went for on goal and literally had all the time in the world and missed it. And then some half decent performances, but just fell out of favour. Then obviously left, and obviously for you, he was excellent, and obviously it must have been quite hard to lose, a talisman like him.
Yeah, gutted to lose him, and I think that's Ryan Hardy in a nutshell. He's the sort of player who will miss the easiest chance you've ever seen and then score the hardest chance you've ever seen. And there wasn't necessarily too much of a discrepancy between those things. And a very streaky player as well. I think he went almost a calendar year without scoring from open play for us in the Championship. I think between. I think it was pretty much calendar year. But then in the second half of last season was absolutely unbelievable. And when Muslic came in, he reinvented him as not quite the sort of main striker, but just playing, just behind the striker. And he was absolutely brilliant. So, it was inevitable that he was going to go really. Well, I say inevitable. There were some rumours going around that, he really appreciated living in Plymouth. He was sort of settled there, and that we thought maybe there was sort of, half of 1% of a chance that he might stay, but he was one of those who was clearly going to be top of the list for any Championship club looking for a striker reinforcement. It was reported, not confirmed, that he had a very low relegation release clause of about 700k, which is really galling to lose him for that little. But, again, that made him a very attractive pickup. And I think when it comes to a club like Wrexham, we're not going to be able to compete with the wages offered. If anything, my surprise was that he didn't go any sooner, because he actually had a really good debut season in the Championship for us the year before, and that was coming up from League One, where we got 101 points, and he obviously played a big part in that. But I wouldn't have said that I or certainly some other fans thought he was like a shoo-in to be a good Championship player, and actually someone who I think the higher up the leagues he went with us, having started all the way down in League Two on loan from you initially, he just looked better and better the higher up he went. And I think in the Championship, where defences can sometimes play a high line, he is unbelievably quick. He's got great movement, great football intelligence. He knows how to get in behind, and I think maybe that actually sort of favours his style more so than playing in League One, where it's common for defences to sit in a bit more and you have to sort of play in front of them a bit more. And he was just absolutely brilliant at stretching teams, running down the channels. So not a surprise that he left, but really gutting. In addition to being a good player, he's someone who was a great servant for the club over a long period of time, and had a good rapport with the fans. Obviously scored the winner for us against Liverpool in the FA Cup last year, which is a sort of legendary, I think will be a legendary moment for a long time to come. And disappointing. And a bit disappointing as well to see him go to Wrexham and then they bring in, 4 other strikers. I feel like maybe he might be a bit wasted there, although maybe if he doesn't impress for them, hopefully we can have a go at getting him back on loan in January. That would be amazing. We'll see. But obviously all the best to him. So
tell us how you expect Plymouth to set up on Saturday, how they've set up so far. With us, we've been playing a 4-4-2 for the majority of the time under Steve Bruce. He tweaked it on Tuesday night. He's very committed to playing that way. But obviously him and Cleverley are at complete other ends of the spectrum. So I'm wondering how flexible Cleverley might be if that's not working. I know you said there was some suggestion that you maybe should, from some fans, they should tear up the plan, which of course isn't very easy, is it, and switch to a 3. But how are you guys setting up? And is it flexible? Is it a 2 up front? Are you playing with wingers? Just give Blackpool fans an insight into what we can expect in the setup.
So every game so far it's been 4-2-3-1, and I expect very strongly that it will be that again. Like I said, he seems to want to coach that system, and I think his view, which might be true or it might not, we'll have to wait and see. But I think there's a greater chance that it is true than some other fans seem to think. His view is that a lot's been going against us, and it just really takes one thing to go in our favour, and suddenly we'll turn things around. So I think he wants to sort of carry on with this system, and I'd be very surprised if he changed formation for the weekend. I'd be surprised as well, because I think going to a back 3 would be an acknowledgement that the defence is the biggest problem. And on Tuesday it wasn't. We brought in a new player in the back line, and this guy Alex Mitchell that I mentioned, who made us look a lot more solid. We went from conceding 2 or 3 goals a game to only conceding once, and that was a goal that was borderline offside anyway. I think it was on, but it's not like they sort of carved us open at will. It was one good chance, and I think Orient are a good team. So it's the problems were very much more at the upper end of the pitch. So I think he'll be sort of keeping the attacking nature of the system going. The difference so far has really been in personnel, and he does seem quite willing to sort of shuffle not only players in and out of the team, but players in and out of different positions. So like I mentioned, Caleb Watts in 4 games has already played in 3 totally different positions for us Amici, the winger that I mentioned, has played in the 10 and out wide. We also have a couple of defenders who are very versatile, who can play either fullback or centre-back and have played both this season. So that is where it becomes a little bit hard to say. In terms of key players, though, in terms of the ones who I think, you're likely to see probably lining up in fairly predictable positions, I think that Alex Mitchell, the loanee from Charlton, will start at centre-back. Again, I think he is seen as the best centre-back at the club right now. And again, is someone who looks like a solid player at this level, if not spectacular. Malachi Boateng, one of the two holding midfielders. I think there was a sense coming into the season that he might not be favoured in that role because we'd signed Ibrahim, who I mentioned earlier, and then also Brendan Wiredu from Fleetwood. Wiredu has had like a comedy sort of Jonathan Woodgate-esque at Real Madrid start to life at Argyle. He scored an own goal on the opening day, got sent off for diving last week, which was a preposterous decision, but he's not had much luck so far. So Boateng, who we signed in January as a kind of last-minute midfield reinforcement, didn't really play a lot under Muslic in the Championship. But he's come in and probably looked like one of our best players, certainly in terms of the work he does off the ball. He's definitely one to watch. And I think, how solid we are has a lot to do with how good a game he's having in the base of that midfield. And then I probably would say Watts as the other key player to watch. Again, it's not quite sure what position he'll play in, but after neither of our established strikers really did anything on Tuesday night, it wouldn't be a massive surprise to me to see Watts play up front again, but we'll see.
Okay.
Your expectations probably clouded by the fact that everything's going on around in the background. I'll be honest, Tuesday was one of the worst games I've seen Blackpool play for a number of years, and it was very difficult to watch in terms of the setup. We didn't have a shot on target until the 93rd minute, and that was a horrific header that went straight at the keeper from about 12 yards out. It wasn't a good watch, and if we're anything like we were against Exeter and Plymouth, Mansfield the other night, I generally think if you've got your core about you and you play with attacking intent, I think you will find a lot of success, especially like you say, you've got home advantage and it probably is coming at the right time for you to play us. But what are your expectations going into Saturday? Because I know football isn't that easy as me saying you'll do well. I do think personally you will get the win, although I'd like to have faith that Bruce can turn it around. But I think it's an important game for you. I think the home crowd will start to in raptures, if I'm honest. I think they'll get behind the team and an early goal could settle you down. But what are your expectations going into Saturday and probably more so continually over the next sort of 5 or 6 games? Because I know you predict a better finish to the season that has obviously started.
Yeah, I mean, hard to know what to expect at the moment. There are some friends and fellow podcasters of mine who think we're going down after 4 games. I think that is ridiculously premature, especially given the window hasn't even closed yet. But it's probably due to the psychological scarring of struggling over the last couple of years, albeit in a higher league. I think for me, I'll start with the broader sense and then come on to the game. What I'm just finding hard to analyse is to what extent the current form is kind of alarming and to what extent it just feels like a bad run of form that's happened to come at the beginning of the season. Obviously, it's kind of a small data set of games, so I find it a little bit hard to separate those things out. Yeah, on the one hand, I think certain areas of the pitch we look unbelievably off it. Regrettably, the goalkeeper who we signed to be our second choice, our first choice is injured at the moment. It just looks miles and miles off it. He's not been the problem in the last couple of games, but he doesn't really inspire confidence going forward. Yeah, defensively, we've looked off it, but we've got this new player, this new couple of signings in, so maybe we'll be better there. Up front, we're miles off it. In between, though, I do think, and in between here and there, I do think we have some quality players. And I think it's also undeniably true that we've got a very long injury list for this time of the season, which includes, a goalkeeper who is excellent and a centre-back who is excellent in Julio Pleguezuelo. So that's unlucky. My friends might give this short shrift, but I do see a team there where there are passages of play that are promising and there's just a gelling issue. We had a moment, just a small moment on Tuesday night that wouldn't have shown up on any match highlights or anything, or probably even in any data, but it's one where Amici, the winger, is kind of advancing over the halfway line. He just wants the striker to run in behind. He plays the ball in behind the striker or comes short instead. And it's just that moment where you can tell they're not on the same wavelength, and that presumably that changes over the course of a season. So, and obviously, even if we do go down, we're not going to lose every single game. And 4 defeats on the trot, becoming 5 would be an absolute disaster. And I think statistically, it just seems likely that you're, going to win a game at some point. So I have predicted that we'll win on Saturday. I don't want to say that with arrogance or with a huge sense of certainty. Like it's very, very possible that if you come down and get an early goal, our heads will go down and we'll just be absolutely abject again. One thing that will be very interesting to see, and we have literally not done it in any competition this year, even though we did end up beating QPR in the Carabao Cup, we still went 2-0 down in that game. It'll be interesting to see how this team responds to going 1-0 up, and that will happen at some point because we are starting games on the front foot. I don't think there's an issue with how we're starting games. At some point, that is going to lead to an early goal, and then I think we'll learn a lot from that because I think it'll either be the case that we're just mentally weak and we'll then sit back and rest on our laurels and we'll get picked off, or it'll be right. That's the confidence we needed. We're now going to push on and we're going to be unbelievably dominant. So. Yeah, we'll get that first one at some point, and I do think against you lot, it seems like it seems like you've conceded a lot of goals. I haven't actually watched any of your games from the highlights and just the stats. You're conceding a lot. We have shown
8 from set pieces.
Right,
worst defense in here.
And we have shown in bursts that we're actually very good going forward. Tuesday we weren't, but late at Lincoln away we lost 3-2, but we did score 2 good goals. Barnsley on the opening day scored 1, should have had more. So at QPR in the cup we scored 3 and we absolutely battered them for 90 minutes. It was a team of kids, but it was such a good performance from us that it shows that there is something there, I think, in a forward sense. So yeah, I think if we can just get our mindset right and just get a bit of luck early on, then I think we can put you on the back foot and go on to win the game. And I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. But again, I don't say it with a ton of confidence. I think if you offered me a draw right now, I'd probably take that just to stop the rot and try to orient in the right direction. As for expectations for the season as a whole, I said we'd finish 4th, which was the most optimistic of any of my friendship group. But they all had us finishing sort of slightly behind that at the beginning of the season, certainly not going down. And I think that that level of prediction is just a huge overreaction. How many times have you seen teams start the season absolutely terribly and then do well, or teams start the season like a house on fire and then they like a train I should say, and then they fall off? It happens all the time. And Orient, a good example. I think they lost 4 games at the beginning of last season, and then they were bottom in September, October kind of time, and they ended up getting to the playoffs. So I'm not saying I don't think the smart money would be on us to do that at this point, but it would not surprise me whatsoever if we actually start just putting in a run of performances that are really good. We then might go back to being crap, and it might just be a bit of an up and down season. But yeah, I think the predictions that we're going to be one of the bottom sides are, again, it's not impossible, but I think it's premature, and we'll get that first win sometime, and I think Saturday is a good candidate to do it, hopefully. Well, not for you, but hopefully for us.
Just before we end this preview part, do you have any questions for myself or Martin?
No, I was going to ask generally speaking, what you make of your start, because I know, I think if you, before a ball was kicked, had offered any of our fans your transfer business, we would have all absolutely bitten our hand off for it. I think it was actually the type of recruitment that we were expecting to do. I think we were expecting to come down and just pick off other teams' best players and throw money around, and we haven't done it. I've taken a bit more of a nuanced view on that, which is that I think that type of recruitment is great unless it doesn't work. Unless it doesn't work, in which case not only have you not achieved your objectives, but you've also potentially squandered a load of money on players who are on big contracts and are hard to shift. And obviously, it's not been a good start for it. So I'm just wondering how you're sort of feeling about that in light of your start to the season.
I'll let you go, Martin.
Well, the recruitment's been good. We've been very critical. It sounds very similar. We Tom and I both smiled when you said about being promised a top 6 budget, because we've kind of talked about that for a few years and never really backed it up, but we have this summer. So we obviously expected a much better start. We've had some injuries, though. We have had some, a bit like you, we've had some key injuries. Fraser Horsfall, we nicked Stockport's captain, and he played pre-season with an injury, and then had a nightmare against Stevenage where he played a short back pass and they scored from it, and he's not been seen since because he's not fit. He's going to be a couple of weeks away, I think. So we've signed some good players, but some of them have been injured. But it's just been unexpected. Tom and I, I'm sure, expected a much better start than this. I expected us to be solid. I really thought that we would be really solid and have a firm base to work from, but we've been absolutely shambolic at the back. As I say, worst defence in the EFL. It's very worrying. It is very well. Obviously, we're going to talk about that after you've gone, but we didn't expect this at all. So the recruitment, I think, has been good. I personally believe that the club has done the right thing by going for the players that we have, but we are struggling badly with what to do with it. I think we've signed wingers that we're not playing. So it's odd. And we're playing a couple of players from last season who, well, one in particular wouldn't get him anywhere near my starting 11. But I don't know. It's an odd start. It's not what we expected. Put it that way.
Yeah. And I did say this was more after 2 or 3 games not after 3, so you won your 3rd game, but after a couple of games, I did say I think I'd be more worried if I was a Blackpool fan than an Argyle fan, because you are building from that really kind of positive end of the season you had last time around, or at least sort of broadly positive since Bruce came in, and sort of built on that with signings. Whereas in some ways, even I, who predicted us to finish 4th, which I'm thinking is optimistic now, but even with that, I said we would do very badly in August. Not as badly as we have done, but I predicted us to have really just a couple of wins because, coming down the league and having a new manager and an entirely new squad is not easy. So, interesting it's not going well for you, but I guess I would just leave you with the silver lining that I'm living with us, which is very early days and not unimaginable that you guys will click, certainly with the quality you've got in the squad.
Sure.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I can't really add much more. That we've signed some exciting players like Danny Imre. He hasn't started yet. He potentially will be coming in Saturday. We played Brown from Leyton Orient at right back because he doesn't like our current right back. We've signed Hansen from Birmingham, who they signed for over £1 million, and we've left him on the bench for most games. And as Martin said, without saying names, CJ Hamilton's playing, who is a pathetic footballer in terms of giving us an outlet. He does some good things, okay, but he's just poor when Hansen's got such technical ability. So yeah, it's frustrating that he signed wingers to play a 4-4-2 and he's putting centre midfielders at right back and wingers that can't play there very well when we've signed players to replace the quality we had last season. So I'm sure it will come. I'm sure he's got this overall plan, of course, but to quote a Blackpool journalist, it can't go on like this for much longer for Bruce, because the irons will be in the fire, and whilst I think he'll be given time, I think there'll be a point where he would want to walk away if it turned quite toxic, because he's at an age and he's got respect for himself and probably the football club. If this goes on for 10 more games and we get a couple of wins, it won't be good. But if we start to get the odd draw and a few wins, then we will build from that. It's a long season, as everybody knows, like you've said. So we'll see on Saturday. If we play like we do against Mansfield, though, I see you winning comfortably 2 or 3-0, because if you score early and we play like that, we don't have an identity, which is frustrating. We don't even know what formation we're going to play, so we haven't really got that about us yet. So I hope we start well, and I hope it's a really good game, and I hope it's fairly end-to-end, but for the life of me, I can't see it just based on how I feel about Tuesday.
Well, good luck for it.
Thank you, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. And
take care, John.
Saturday. Be a fun game. Martin,
as David ends on "In Bruce We Trust?" ? I don't know if that's him saying he doesn't know if he trusts him, or it's supposed to be an exclamation mark. Who knows? But for now, I will trust Bruce. But we'll come on to the Mansfield game in a minute. But we are going to start very quickly with the Huddersfield game, because we haven't actually done a review on it yet. And it was obviously quite a fun first half. That 3-2s in the first half are quite famous with Blackpool. The playoff final, of course, with a lot more action and a red card. And it was a vigorous game, which initially at the start, the first 5 minutes, obviously we don't really deal with an attack down the left, and they cut inside and get an awful deflection somewhere that Peacock Farrell didn't see. And of course, it was laser focus on him for conceding such a poor goal where he doesn't move. And like I said, the irons are in the fire, and Bruce's question marks over that starting him again after a poor start was obviously echoed by that goal.
Yeah, of course. And we're looking, as football fans, we always look for a scapegoat. And Peacock Farrell has made some horrendous mistakes. But I know just briefly, he got booed when they read the team lineup out. I was in the north, and a lot of people booed it, and then they obviously booed him after the goal, and that is something I do agree with Bruce. That sort of stuff's got to stop. We can talk about it in fan groups, and we can talk about it on here, but actually booing the guy before he's even taken to the pitch is pathetic. And then obviously we're all blaming him for the goal because he doesn't move for it. But then you watch it back again and you think, well, could he have got it? Is it just the fact that it does take that little nick and it's so far in the corner that he can't get anywhere near it? But we're almost expecting him to make a mistake. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and if you think it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So it was an awful start, but I do think the goalkeeper's probably been harshly judged on that one, personally. But it was just typical of the way we started the season, a really bad moment, and when the ground is pretty positive. The atmosphere in the north all day was great, actually. Apart from the booing, it was brilliant. So it's just like the balloon just gets burst again, doesn't it? After a few minutes to concede a goal like that, and it's poor defending anyway. Let's not get away from that. But the guy with the goalkeeper gloves on, he seems to be copping for a lot of stick at the moment. Some of it deserved, some of it not.
No, I completely agree with you, and I obviously wanted Travers to start. Both Mike and MB have rightly said, saddened to hear. I mean, at the end of the day, do you boo a player regardless? It's not like he probably doesn't try, of course. And we all know his start was poor, and he's not been, the best of goalkeepers. But the last thing you want is to be booed, and then you feel like absolute crap for the rest of the game. Especially every shot you face, you're going to be worrying, what's going to happen next if it goes in. Am I going to be substituted? Is it going to be that bad sort of thing? I don't really know, but we'll come on to the more positive side of him very soon. But I completely agree that the booing needs to be addressed, and they certainly weren't going to be booing him. One at full time, two when he was catching the ball in the first and second half to relieve the pressure, and obviously three against Mansfield when he made an unbelievable save for the penalty, which we'll come on to in just a short while. But this name Ennis makes me 99.99% joyful, warm, giddy, and excited because despite us not having the best of starts to the game, it was one of these moments when what more Odu had one of the most shocking games I've seen from a centre back, although it's probably not within him to be 10 times better than that. And as the Huddersfield fan said previously, he's been absolute rock at the back. I cursed him because he had a poor start, and then that was added to when the ball flew over his head and we missed chances to bounce. And two things for me is it's fantastic to see Ennis sharp and as fit and as direct as he was, because we're gagging for a striker like that, of course, and Ennis fulfilled that on Saturday for 36 minutes. And the run through on goal was excellent, and if anything, Goodman was just as questionable in this instance.
Agreed.
As Peacock Farrell was, because it hit the back of his heel and it looked like he had so much time to see the ball, but it goes into the bottom corner, and obviously I'm not complaining, but fantastic positivity from Ennis, and that paid off with, I call it a smart finish, with his David Healy, as he said after the game.
He's great, isn't he? As long as he doesn't get silly red cards, he's going to get 20 this season. I think his movement's great. He should be here, and I think a lot of people said he is the most important signing of the summer. I think we can sign as many centre backs and midfielders as you want, but everyone wants a goal scorer in your team. And right now, and I don't mean any disparity towards Taylor, he is the only person that looks like regularly scoring goals in our squad right now. I'm sure that'll change, but right now he is the main man. And his movement's just electric, and he just anticipated that, that Watmo made that awful mistake and that all defenders should never do. Don't let it bounce. He lets it bounce. He makes an absolute cock up of it, and he's in Ennis, and he's got pace and he's got enthusiasm, and yes, it's a slightly lucky finish because the keeper should definitely save it. But I don't see anybody else in our squad kind of making those runs right now or showing that kind of determination, to bust a gut and get in the box, and I'm sure that'll come with Taylor. But as far as Ennis is concerned, he's absolutely our main man, and when he's not playing, you definitely miss him. 100% miss that he's not there.
Yeah. We're going to run through this game and the Mansfield game fairly quickly, guys. We don't want to go too far past an hour. So, this seems like a lifetime ago after Tuesday anyway, doesn't it, Martin? But I do want to celebrate the fact that I, in the group chat, not, verbally at the ground or whatever, was frustrated that potentially we kept a few of these middlemen in the lineup, and I'm not afraid to admit that we probably need a change, and Lyons maybe could have come in at right back, Brown could have come in at centre mid for Evans with Morgan or whatever, whatever you wanted, just to see that sort of change from stagnant performances we've had. But my God, was I happy that Evans started the game. I just have to, emphasise the importance of Fletcher in this move, because he was involved in the build-up, and then he played a beautiful 1-2. The weight of pass to Evans allowed him to strike the ball superbly, and Goodman again didn't get anywhere near it, and it was fantastic to see 2 quick goals in 5 minutes and turn this game around. And for the first time this season, really, apart from a little bit against Stevenage, we had momentum, and it felt like the Bloomfield Road of last season, last season we drew so many at home, but just when we had momentum in every single attack, we were excited about it, and those 2 goals in those 5 minutes gave us a bit of that back.
It was mental. Yeah, it was absolutely mental. It was so good to get back in the game fairly quickly, and then for Evans to do that. I mean, I'm sure he needs that for his own confidence, because he had a bad end, as we've covered so many times, had a bad end to last season and a really ineffective start to this season. But he has got ability. He has got ability to shoot, and he's got ability to deliver decent set pieces. And I just think he's been way off it for whatever reason. But it was a heck of a strike. It was one of those where the North, you can't quite believe it had gone in. The North went mental when it went in, and it just goes to show you what a great atmosphere Bloomfield Road is when it gets rocking in a big game like that. And I think we needed after the start, we've had a big game at home against a team that have brought 2,500 fans and are really up for it. And it was brilliant. It was just great to it was just so much better than what we've seen the first 2 or 3 games of the season, wasn't it? It was a great strike, great moment. And at that point, I think they didn't know what hit them. We were absolutely all over them. It was like watching a totally different team. No,
I completely agree. And we said it, didn't we, before the game, that that we didn't want a Northampton at home, or God forbid a Stevenage at home again, just purely on the basis of we needed that extra quality so we can go back and forth with them a little bit more and give us a bit of momentum and a bit of fight. As sad as that to sound, we don't seem to be in the fight against these weaker teams at the moment. But that man, again, after some great work outside the box from Honeyman, poking his, fairly brave, put his foot on the ball and poking it towards the direction of Ennis. And again, I've sung Fletcher's praises about this game and others in the past, but I agree with you, what you said. He's probably the only striker at that moment who gambles whilst being just onside, and obviously enables himself to get to that ball and slot it home. And at 3-1, after 25 minutes after conceding, after the first few, we're in kind of dreamland thinking, this could be 4 or 5 more, but it's never that easy with Blackpool, of course. But it was phenomenal to see us obviously score 3 in quick succession, and Ennis obviously really get off the mark.
It's one of those where obviously I'm down the other end. I was so convinced he was offside that when it went in, I just stood there and went, "Oh, it's a nice finish, but it's not going to count." And then I looked across at the linesman and saw obviously clearly he wasn't offside, and my celebration was about 5 seconds delayed. I couldn't quite believe it had given it. Obviously, it was quite right to give it. Would have been scandalous if he hadn't. But I think it's just the shock of scoring 3 goals so quickly against a really fancy team with the start we'd had on Saturday, and just thinking, God, as long as nothing goes wrong and we don't do anything stupid, we're going to be all right. We might score 4 or 5, because they definitely looked like they'd been completely shell shocked. Like I said before,
first league goal conceded, wasn't it? And they they probably didn't react anywhere near as strongly.
Well, not used to it, are they? Not used to picking the ball out of the net, and I just think, and their fans were very, very loud at the start, but my God, they spent most of the rest of the game very quiet. They were, I thought, for 2,200 away fans who were top of the league at that point, they were really quiet, because I think they were expecting to turn up and roll us over like we were. It didn't work out like that. But yeah, brilliant to go 3-1 up, and then you think, right, let's get to half time and not do anything daft, however form that is, and keep it that way. Oops.
Yeah, and it was an unacceptable goal to concede for a couple of reasons. One, because we don't stop the attack down the left. 2, because Brown got fouled, in my personal opinion. I think Bruce is right as well. I think it's a foul in the centre circle. Mm-hmm. I'm a bit perplexed how he hasn't probably given it. At the end of the day, the referees are so soft predominantly nowadays, and you can clearly see he fouls him. And then we don't deal with the ball across the box, and then we kind of put a foot towards it, and then Coulson kind of gets out to his man, but doesn't put his body on the line as much. If Peacock Farrell stands still and solid, does he maybe punch it away or gets his hand to it? I don't know. It's not the goalkeeper's fault. He rifles it into the top of the net, and if Ennis scores it, if Evans scores it, if Fletcher scores that, he's saying great finish on a fairly tight angle, and you got to accept at that point it was 3-2, and we were in a game, and just to be 3-2 up after the initial start and how the season's gone, you still think, right, like let's reset and go again. But a frustrating goal to concede, and then it follows up with a reckless challenge. I think in the law, for me, I still don't think it's a red. It probably is a red in modern football, but Martin's gone. Hello, mate.
That's all right. The joys of having an iPad. Sorry if anyone's watching.
Yeah, no, all good. Just 3.5 million people watching, mate. Don't worry. It is a stupid challenge in a sense that he has to take a run up to slide him. I think he does his best to keep his leg under him as well as going in with 1 foot slightly raised. He hardly touches the man; he goes down like a sack of bricks, and that prompts the ref within half a millisecond to already have the card in his hand. And I don't know if he should have taken maybe 10 seconds to think about it. I don't know if I'm being naive. A lot of people think it's a red. A lot of people don't think it's a red, but we didn't appeal it, which probably states in modern football, Bruce and the team does think it's a red. And if a player was going to continue to have such a really good start to the season and followed this game up with Mansfield, you want it to be Ennis on that pitch on Tuesday night and really having a go at the defenders and us keeping sort of maybe the same shape and it being a completely different game. But I don't know your thoughts on the red card, but he's one of the most frustrating players to receive the red card in the form he was in on a hat-trick as well. Yeah,
my first thought and you've got to remember that you're miles away not miles away, but I sit at the very top of the North Stand, so anything looks miles away, to be honest. My first thought was, oh my God, he's gone right through him. Definite red card. Then obviously, for those who don't know, we have a podcast chat group where, and someone asked if someone could send a recording of it, which they did, and I watched it once I got a signal in the North, and I watched it and I thought, well, actually, that is a bit harsh. I think the problem is, like you said, it's a bit reckless, and the referee is these guys are gagging to send someone off in the vain hope of getting it right and making sure that a wrong, that some of these terrible challenges punished. In the Premier League, if you got VAR, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they looked at that and went, well, actually, I don't think it is. You've made a mistake. I don't know.
Yeah, but that was the case. We'd appeal it. I think that's why I think it is.
Yeah, you give the ref.
We would have appealed it. That's our form of VAR, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you give the referee an excuse to send you off if you go in like that, and it was a bit reckless and a bit needless. He didn't need to do it. But it's a shame because of all the people, like in terms of the front players that got sent off, and I wouldn't say that I preferred somebody else to get sent off, but probably in reality I would have done because you can't do without him for 3 games. And it's interesting. I watched the footage on Tangerine TV afterwards of the reaction, and he did kind of apologise. He said it might have been a bit of a soft one, but he was admitting it was sloppy on his part. And then Bruce comes out.
Yeah, it was sloppy.
Yeah, exactly. And Bruce came out and said, well, look, it is what it is. I'm not surprised he was sent off, etc. So I think the overall feeling's got to be, well, look, it's one of those things. Hopefully he learns from it. He does play with a hell of a lot of enthusiasm. He's like a sort of puppy at times with a toy, isn't he? Like he's just trying to rip it to bits. He's a very tigerish sort of player. But he's a forwards can't tackle, can they? So, and that's an example of it. He just got it slightly wrong, and it looks horrendous in real time. It also looks horrendous in slow motion, but in reality, it's nowhere near as bad as. I don't think it really.
It doesn't fall under anything other than serious foul play, which unfortunately can't change the.
But you can see why the ref has given it in a way, and he only gets one chance to look at it too. So, gone again.
Unprofessional, Martin. Right, second half solidarity, and I want to talk about 2 players before we move on to Mansfield and surmising Tuesday night. I can appreciate this first half, and there's lots of different players we can talk about, but I do want to talk about George Honeyman, who up until the 95th, 96th minute still had. Sorry, as Mark said initially, no, but watched it in slow-mo and his foot was high. I don't think. If we had VAR, it would have been overturned. Yeah, that's why they didn't appeal it. I agree with you, Mark. It's not a bad tackle, it's just high. Yeah, and he was over enthusiastic, as we've said. But I do want to watch George Honeyman. captain leader, not so legend yet, but tackles 1-3. I think he won countless ground duels. I think it was 6 out of 7. 11 defensive contributions, 3 ball recoveries, headed clearances 2, clearances 4, blocks 3, including that really important one towards the end where he, bullet towards him and he just slid down and took it. He won all of his tackles that he went in for, and I don't think we win this game without George's energy in the middle. I know we were peppered. We had like 15% possession in the second half. It was a defensive unit at the back, and they very rarely had a clear-cut chance, if any, apart from Castledown's shot towards the end, which Peacock Farrell had covered. But it wasn't for the organisation, ironically, at the back, but Honeyman's persistence to be not only sort of halfway up the pitch for some of the game, but also in and around the box, just making sure they can't put any shots off. It was, in my opinion, a man of match performance, although he didn't get it. But without him Saturday, we don't win that game, Martin.
I don't think there are too many better in this league, or too many better signings that have come from the Championship to play in League One this summer than him. He's everything that we at times have lacked, I think, over the past 2 or 3 years: energy and commitment, and also quality, though, because sometimes those 3 things don't come together, do they? You can have someone who's enthusiastic with energy, you can put the foot in, but then what he does is, if he wins the ball, he'll then not give it away most of the time, and that's what I like about him. He's just played at a higher level, and you can see it. We are very lucky to have him. Very lucky. He's an example to a lot of players in our squad about how you should probably conduct yourself, I think. And I also like when he's interviewed off the pitch as well. Like, if they're all having a laugh and a joke, he's the one that kind of gets quite professional about it. And
I even said this doesn't matter if we don't play like that Tuesday, and lo and behold, he's not going to be happy with Tuesday, obviously.
No, he'll be furious. He's a manager on the pitch, isn't he, Honeyman? I think he's the right choice to be captain. And no, he was superb Saturday. We wouldn't have won it without him. And I just think overall, the defensive. I mean, they will be kicking themselves that they never really put us to the sword. It was just crossing to the box, and we just kept heading it out, etc. The longer the game went, with about 75 minutes on the clock, I actually was convinced we were going to win. And we did, but no, Honeyman's.
I wasn't. I still was sweating in the last minute. It's Blackpool after all.
Just got a vibe. It's got a really strange vibe.
It could have been 3-0, and I'd still been a bit nervous, if I'm honest. But yeah.
No, but I also got a very strange, a very negative vibe before a ball was kicked on Tuesday, and I was right. So sometimes you just have to go with your gut feeling, don't you? But yeah. Anyway, it's an important 3 points. It's just a pity that you then don't follow it up with anything like the sort of performance that's needed in a very tough away game. So.
Yeah. I was going to talk about Brown, but Coulson and Brown were both phenomenal at fullback on Saturday. I think Brown's energy was superb, but Coulson got a man of the match, 8 duels won. Defensively, he was superb, showed a lot of energy, and he's the sort of player, when he's on the ball, he doesn't panic too much, but we'll come on to it in a minute. When he has a stinker, he really does have a stinker, in his position and is woeful, considering he got man of the match the week before. But a really important game for him after he's been playing with an injury. He doesn't look 100% fit, but he really showed he's a warrior. And, I thought Casey was back to, shadows of what we saw previously. Obviously, Ennis blocks him when he played Evans. I think they all showed they are ready to play for Bruce and the shirt. Coulson in particular, obviously, was an important game for him, and I wouldn't say rightly one man of the match, but his performance was certainly up there. Yeah,
he's a very inconsistent player. I think when he's on it, he's great, and when he's not, he's like you say, he has a very bad game. But he was there was I remember there was one challenge in particular in the second half where he absolutely it was a really aggressive tackle, but he very comfortably and cleanly won the ball and sort of smashed it straight out of play. But it's a sort of challenge where the fans absolutely.
It was late on when they were trying to attack on the wing, wasn't it? He slid and went into the side.
Yeah, and that's the side. I remember when he was at Aberdeen, when we signed him, some Aberdeen fans said that he didn't have enough heart. I'm not sure. I don't buy into that. I think he has, but I think he seems to be a player that he thrives on a good game, and if he starts a game badly, he tends to stay that way. Do you think? I think when he's on it, he's a really good player, but he's just a confidence player. but yeah, I do like him, and Saturday was probably one of his best performances in wearing our shirt, really.
Yeah, and Mike has rightly said, how we're going to finish this Huddersfield game. I don't think I've heard the atmosphere like at Bloomfield Road for a very long time, especially those last 25 minutes. And if you watch the Bruce cam back, you can hear it on the sidelines, and you do often wonder when Bruce says, "Oh, the fans were excellent, mind," how good every time. But you do wonder how much it impacts the touchline and what the players actually feel in here. And that camera gave us a bit of an insight to actually, bloody hell, they really were the 12th man, or in this case, the 11th man. And, without that, you must feel that on the pitch, and it must have given us an extra boost of energy. So every credit, particularly to the North, but to the whole stadium. And I spoke to Hoggy after the game, and he was wet through. I'll keep it PG, and his hands were bloody as hell. But he said it was worth it when the players give it. He'll give it. Which brings us on to Tuesday, I suppose, a little bit. But every credit to the fans, and rightly pointed out by Mike. It was a phenomenal effort all around by Blackpool, and of course by the players, and it was an important win nonetheless. But we followed that up, Martin, on Tuesday. I'm not going to spend time talking about the game, if I'm honest. We're over the hour mark. In the chat, get your thoughts about the game, but we obviously lined up the game as you see in the window with Brown and Coulson as wing-back, Bloxham, I'll start again, Heckway and Casey at centre-back. A return for Morgan after he obviously played a big part in the game on Saturday, and I thought again he showed energy, which was phenomenal from being injured all that time. It was fantastic to see him back. This has him sitting behind the midfield four, which I don't think is correct. Bloxham, Hamilton, Honeyman, Evans, and to start for Dale Taylor. Thoughts, I suppose, on the lineup initially. I was perplexed by it, if I'm honest. Not that there was a lot of options available, but the immediate reaction from me is he's playing every single centre midfielder at the club in the starting lineup after Finnegan obviously disappeared to Walsall. That's a risk in itself. There's no doubt Brown, Coulson would have been knackered. Maybe Coulson keeps his place, but you've also got Lyons on the bench for some reason isn't fancied, despite Bruce not seeing a tremendous amount of him. I don't really know what to make of the lineup, Martin, but first and foremost, when you're a new striker at a club who's not had much pre-season, the last thing you want to be doing is playing up front by yourself.
Well, I said it early on in the chat. I would on that with that lineup and in the way the game started after about 20 minutes. I wouldn't have wanted to be Dale Taylor on Tuesday night. I do feel desperately sorry for him because I don't know how used to playing up front as an isolated striker he is. I really don't know, but he didn't stand a chance in that game, really, did he? I personally, that's my opinion. I don't think he stood a chance of showing what he can do. I don't think holding up the ball is his strong point, and we definitely didn't play to his strengths when we did get it, and the amount of touches he had bears that out. And I don't think it's any lack of willingness on his part. I just generally think he was a little bit struggling what to do. But it was his predicament was just summed up perfectly. The entire misbalance of the whole team on Tuesday, and the attitude didn't seem right either. And I don't know why that is.
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, to surmise really, and we can talk about the goals all we want and that first half, but we had no shots on target. It stunk when we played Port Vale, Burton, Cambridge, all these other previous seasons. Maybe not Cambridge. I know Rhodes scored the header, but to have no shots.
It was very similar to those games. Yeah.
Yeah, to have no shots on target. Maybe Brown had one on target to stat pad the performance, maybe. Obviously, I'd say that tongue in cheek, but horrific display. And despite Mansfield getting a win the previous Saturday as well, they didn't start very well. The quality on the pitch undoubtedly is better. But I have to give credit to Cloughie's side. They're very hard to beat. They were when we played them last time. Everyone knew their roles. You can see from the graphic that they played very high up the pitch. Their two centre backs holding, even just inside the centre circle, and their midfield was structured into that four. But they've also their wing backs 20 and 2 were playing so far up the pitch. They acted as wingers whilst they surrounded the front of the pitch.
Yeah.
We've got Lyons and Ashworth sitting on the bench that can play left and right back. We could have kept a 4-4-2. Hansen could have played. Eberway could have played. Bloxham could have played up front with Taylor. We could have kept it to a 4-4-2. We could have kept it direct. We could have kept it on the wings. We could have given people a rest. We could have had structure to our side. Evans could have sat out for Morgan. Brown could have come in if he needed to, or if he was, knackered after Saturday. Morgan comes in with Evans or Honeyman. It was a centre midfield three, but the three you want to see in that midfield, in my personal opinion, has to play in a 4-3-3 with Evans at the base, Morgan and Honeyman doing the running, or Morgan maybe being a bit more attacking, and a bit like Vaughan, Southern, and Adam. You had that complex three in the middle, but they all work so well together. If you have a look at the graphic, you had Evans sitting almost with the centre backs at Heckway, Casey sitting in a position behind a Heckway, so that line isn't very neat. Coulson and Brown kind of not really having any cohesion in the wing back positions, and actually leaving quite a big gap behind. This is their average positions. Morgan wasn't sitting behind in front of the four. He was actually just behind the strikers, and Hamilton played. That's his average position. He wasn't really on the wing, but didn't really get himself involved at all. But positionally, that's not what Bruce has been setting up for, and I can't for the life of me think they had a lot of time to talk about this. But the game itself, I think someone said it in the chat. Let me just find it. MB, you have taken the words out of my mouth. Bruce is gaslighting us when he says there was nothing in the game. And Martin, you, I say argued, you countered a comment in the group from someone who said, it was a game of two set pieces. It absolutely wasn't. They moved the ball fast and that's all night. They constantly probed. They were organised. And I'm not saying this is just Mansfield, don't get me wrong, but it was a team which looked like they were Blackpool and we expected probably to be Mansfield, and they took the game to us. And credit to Clough, he probably knew exactly what he was doing. Well, he did know what he was doing. Inevitably, the set pieces failed us, but the first half, there was a moment with Dale Taylor and Hamilton, where the passes weren't good enough, and maybe it's a different game if we go 1-0 up, but on whole, they controlled the game, Martin, and we can come on to the penalty in a minute. But the first half was a hard watch, made slightly better by the penalty save at the end.
It was just to pick, obviously what MB just said there. That's the kind of the point I made in the chat, because what we've always said about Steve Bruce is that even a few weeks ago we were saying, look, he comes out and tells it like it is. There's no bullshit. He's very honest. Critchley used to it was very much like a politician at times, and he would skirt the issue, and Bruce never has done. But on Tuesday night, all he talked about was two set pieces, and there was nothing in the game. There was a lot in the game. There was desire, work rate, intensity, passing ability, a final end product, and a team cohesion with Mansfield. There was none of that with us. And today in his interview, Radio Lancashire, he spent the majority of the 7 minutes, and he was asked the question, talking about set pieces. Oh, we've worked on it again. Not once, as he said, but also, I have to be totally honest, there was one shot on target, and that was in the 93rd minute. We didn't look a team. We looked a bit lopsided, etc. It's been focused on the set pieces in it, and I don't think many people are kidded by it. I think there's a wider issue there now, whether it is attitudinal or whether it's, I don't know, whether they were knackered after. I don't know what it is, but he's not being completely straight there by saying that it's just down to set pieces and there's nothing in the game. Because there's a lot in the game, and it angers me that, because I don't care whether it's Steve Bruce or some guy that's only had 5 games in management. You cannot tell the fans that, especially the ones that travelled again, and expect them to go, yes, Steve, you're right, because you're so experienced and will hang on your every word. It's total nonsense. And that he needs to learn from that and not do that again, because if that goes on, people will lose a lot of patience very quickly, because one thing that Blackpool fans won't be after what happened to us is be led down the garden path because we don't fall for it. Sorry, but it's just I didn't like his interview afterwards. It annoyed me. But there you go.
Yeah, it is 8. Mark, you're spot on. It's 8 conceded from set pieces. And Critchley used to do this all the time, where he'd say, we were really good in, passages of play, etc. But the most concerning thing for me Tuesday, not only was I don't know why I was buzzing about Mansfield on a Tuesday and all game because of Saturday, and I thought it was our season sort of curtain raiser where we finally click as a team. I know Ennis wasn't involved, but I thought it would be 4-4-2 with Bloxham and Taylor, and excited for that combination up front because Bloxham's a big guy, right? He can play. He's more mobile than Fletcher, and he can feed him in, and they're both intelligent footballers. So I was excited by that. Maybe seeing Hansen, I know he's not pulled up any trees initially, but just going back to our 4-4-2 that we played and attacking some teams, but there was absolutely zero patterns of play in the game, and we consistently knock the ball around the middle, around the back. We'll play a long ball to Taylor, who bless him. People moaned about his press and maybe not getting in behind, but we did give him absolutely any chance of being successful on his debut. There's just no patterns of play, and I can't see what we're trying to do. And in moments against Huddersfield, arguably, you could see that, especially on the counter and in transition. Second half, you can't get much by. Were we lucky to beat Huddersfield? I don't really know. You can probably say it's a defensive display, deserved 3 points, but we still conceded two goals, and there was worrying signs there initially in the first sort of 15, 20 minutes. What I don't like about the defence is we seem to just pass the ball out when Coulson and Brown, Hamilton, whoever, when they're in positions in the corner flag, they won't lump it forward. They'll just tap the ball and it will fall to an opposition that they can go again. It happened against Exeter for their fourth, and a chance for the third when they hit it just wide of the left-hand post. Hamilton knocks it to their player and they play a 1-2 and they're in behind again. For someone so proud to be a defender and an attacking and aggressive one at that, we look shambolic. And every team in League One, bar 2 or 3, your Wigans, your Burtons now under Bowyer, apart from maybe Peterborough and a couple other sides, they will pride themselves on doing the basics right. And we absolutely didn't do that Tuesday. We gave away a very silly free kick with Brown. It got looped in. The ball was hammered off. I forget, Heckway wasn't at his hand. And we just made stupid mistakes. And maybe people don't think it's penalty because it was close up, but his arms raised above his head again.
Penalty all day long for me.
Penalty all day long. And just before we finish talking about the game, obviously I just want to give credit to Peacock Farrell because he made a fantastic save initially. One he probably should make, but again he makes it and he looks like a proper shot stopper in that moment. And then the second one, that penalty save is no joke. It's a very, very good penalty. And it's an even better save, of course. I don't think he flaps at the ball into the box. It actually gets poked away from his hands. Maybe he can be a bit more commanding, but good work by Evans. Evans gave away the penalty, didn't he? Sorry. But Evans obviously made up for it by clearing that shot off the line. And it was a great moment for him and one he can take great pride in because I don't think the goals are really his fault too much, of course.
No, definitely. The penalty save's absolutely world class. It's superb. And he sort of stretches for the cross, but I can't really fault him for that. I think that the save hopefully will do him the world of good. I think the little bit of shithousing he did in the second half against Huddersfield has endeared him to the fans a bit more too, and probably given him that little bit of confidence and a bit puffy shoulders out and feel confident about yourself, because clearly there is a goal. I mean, he's been called up to the Northern Ireland squad again, hasn't he, today? I mean, I don't know what the strength and depth of Northern Ireland goalkeepers is, but if you can't be considered terrible if you keep getting picked for them. He's got 50 caps, hasn't he? So there is a goalkeeper in there somewhere. He's definitely lost his way over the past couple of seasons, but he's
I think Huddersfield and then Mansfield's first half showed that he can show signs of being fairly stable. Actually. The centre backs and the wing backs are not giving him any hope with the chances that were being created.
Yeah, he's not the biggest issue right now, despite the individual mistakes that have been made. He's not the biggest issue. There are massive issues in front of him. I
sound like a broken record, but I just don't get why Bruce or Blackpool signed these wingers and still play Hamilton, who you can call me negative all you want. He is utterly awful in a side that wants to win promotion. He does do some good things. He does come back. He puts a little bit of pressure on the defender. He's a little bit stronger this campaign, but he's no outlet. The header he has at the back post is appalling. He tries to loop the goalkeeper from 7 yards instead of either 1 knocking it back or 2 maybe chesting it having a volley, 3 just having a bullet header on goal. He's got no instinctive shots about him, and we've got Hansen Eboué, Bloxham, whoever you want to play in those wing positions, who are much better footballers, and in those sort of positions, in those moments, to say Neil Critchley quote, we need someone who's going to get the, a bit like their defender, did and got the goal when he had one opportunity.
Yeah.
So
if it's true that Eboué, and I'm not, I'm only going off what Palace fans and if it's true that he's had some attitude problems in the past, how much better is his attitude going to be if he comes to Blackpool and CJ Hamilton's blocking his progress and he just sits on the bench? He's the sort of signing that if he doesn't get in the team and get a run of games, it won't work out. He'll just disappear and be loaned out or gone in a year or something. Do you know what I mean by that? Is that he needs to play, and if he doesn't play, I can't see him moving all the way up from London to Blackpool and sitting there going, Jesus, I'm down the bottom of League One. I can't get past CJ Hamilton. You got to hope it changes.
It's usually it's Hansen left, Eboué right.
Yeah,
I know we all want to play
Bloxham
there, but currently,
I
for now, put Bloxham please with Taylor and just go 4-4-2. Put two, make a decision at right back. For me, if Imre is going to go in there, he's going to be, better than Brown, and arguably better than Lyons, of course. Maybe he doesn't like how strong Lyons is, I don't know, but the poor kid hasn't had an opportunity after working his balls off to get back from a horrific injury at Leyton Orient.
Yeah.
So he hasn't really been given too much of an opportunity.
No.
But play players in their position. We've brought Brown to be the sort of player that we needed in midfield, and we're using him as a right back. And I appreciate you won't mind doing it, but you listen to every signing that we've made this window has said, one about Bruce, two about the ability that they have in their positions, and three, we've signed them for a purpose, and using Brown as a right back isn't a purpose. If Lyons' performance is that honking, then maybe you go, right, enough's enough. Brown, you're moving back to right back and so on and so forth. But let's try and play the formation that we want to play, and stop conceding such pathetic goals. And if Bruce says Banksy's worked on it, it's got to work different. It's got to work harder, or Bruce has got to take control of the situation. He's our manager. To take control of the situation, Steve Bruce, show them the principles of defending, or sign someone like Elkan Baggett or someone that we had last season who's commanding in the air and hopefully can play more than
Horsfall. I'm sure.
Maybe Horsfall.
At
the same time, mate. It's putting your body on the line for the badge, and the Heckway's marking of the first header. He's the wrong side of him, and it just allows him to have the ball. There's no shoulder barge, and there's no like getting your head in the mixer. There's nothing there. He might not be the wrong side of him. But on an angle, it looks like he's just allowed him to be. He's in front of behind him. And he's obviously going to have the first header on the ball. He's not shown any sort of heart in there. But the organisation from the rebounds and everything, yes, the second goal probably was offside. But it's the sheer fact that we let him get into that position in the first place, and the ball's not either in the keeper's arms or halfway down the pitch. And if we were fifth last season, what are you doing so differently? We can't do zonal, and we now arguably can't do man for man. So if there are only two options, then he's really got to think, just have a bit of heart and desire about it. The defenders are good enough. Casey's good enough. Heckway's good enough to head the ball out. So is Brown, so is the others. They just need to get it right, and it's unacceptable to concede 8 goals just from set pieces this season so far. So
none of it makes sense to me, because last season we made an absolute art form of going to sort of bang average teams like Northampton, Stevenage, Bristol Rovers, Shrewsbury, and picking them off quite easily away from home. It was at home when we struggled. This season we've played the likes of Exeter. And Mansfield actually beat us last season. But do you know, we've struggled against not so good teams already this year. And ironically, in typical Blackpool style, the only team we've beaten is supposedly the best team in the league, or one of them. So it doesn't make is it an attitude thing? But the attitude didn't seem to be a problem last year. So we're so schizophrenic again. I can't put my finger on what the hell the problem is. Well, apart from basic defending not being very good, but it's all wrong, isn't it? It just, there is nothing. Nothing makes sense.
The defending is 70% the problem. The other massive problem is I don't think we're playing football anywhere near in the right places to start to build a side that is going to be consistently attacking and scoring goals like we were away from home last campaign. There was an easy option left and right. We used the two strikers very well with Ennis and Fletcher. We countered superbly. And this season, we seem to just be pinging the ball backwards and forwards, and then playing a massive ball up front. So, what we need to see from Plymouth is from Blackpool against Plymouth is organisation, using the wins and clearly, trying to hurt a defence which is shaky. But they just lost 1-0 to an incredible Leyton Orient side. Regardless of who Leyton Orient side, they seem to just have the Richie Wellens touch about them and just do the principles right. And they'd die for the shirt every single week. They went to Plymouth on a Tuesday night. They seemed to play very well, create a few chances. And if Plymouth played like they did against Barnsley, where they created like 6-7 really good chances, Caleb Watts missed a couple of sitters and had one disallowed and scored, our defence won't be able to cope with it. However, if we're good in transition and we've got Bloxham and Taylor up front and we can use the wings really well, it will be a really good game and we'll see a different side to Blackpool. But if it continues the next 2 or 3 games, it's going to turn horrible really, really quickly. And I just don't want to see that happen. So
it's a huge game, Saturday. If we win, we've won 2 out of the first 5 and it doesn't look horrendous. But if we lose, we'll have won 1 out of the first 5 and lost the others. So it does look horrendous. So I think it's a huge game Saturday. It shouldn't be underestimated. It's massive.
No, and yeah, I just you're right. I think 2 out of 5 is acceptable. You got Bolton. It's a really big home game. They've won 1 in 10 now. I think it is. We need to put the pressure on.
I'm not worried about playing them though. I'm not worried.
No, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. But I need to start seeing a team that's settled. And despite the injuries, we've still got. And then we're going to finish by talking about the squad and the position we're in. So we've got Ashworth and Coulson at left back. We've got, granted two centre backs at the moment with Horsford to come back and maybe a loan to come in. We've got 2 goalkeepers. You've got Imre, Lyons, and of course Brown at right back. We've got Morgan, Evans, Brown in the middle, and Honeyman. Honeyman can also go out wide, but you've got Bloxham and Eboué, and you've got Hamilton, you've got Hansen. And at the moment, we've got Taylor, Ennis, and Fletcher. So arguably, we need another striker. I know Billy Waite signed today predominantly for the academy, maybe to sit around the bench as well, and hopefully playing cup games to see what it's all about. But for me, we need another centre back. We need another striker, and arguably an absolute bastard in midfield again. But we've been crying out for that, and I haven't seen much of Brown there. But where do you feel? And in the comments, please get involved. As our last topic, where do you see Martin the squad? Because technically, we've got a lot of. When fully fit, we've got a position predominantly for a player for every position or 2 or 3 in those, but we probably haven't got as much depth. Looking at that bench on Tuesday, of course, when we have injuries, you've got nothing to really come on, and that was a real killer in the game Tuesday also. Yeah.
For me, we definitely need another defender who can preferably, for me, play comfortably at centre-back or full-back, but without a doubt another left-back, without another left-back. Ashworth days must be numbered if he can't get a game.
I really liked him against Huddersfield. I thought he was excellent.
I know what you're saying, but he doesn't seem to fancy him, does he? Probably another forward, and maybe somebody from the Premier League. Some young kid who has come to get experience and doesn't expect to start every game because it depends on their status, on their level. But we are definitely 3 short. We're definitely 3 short. Desperately need cover at the back and another attacking player, and whether that's another, not really a wide player, but I think we do need maybe like a creative 10 or something like that again. But we're certainly 3.
We don't play with a 10 though. That's the thing.
No.
He needs to decide what he wants. If you're going to sign a 10, you're not going to play him. If he doesn't play the wingers he's signed, he's not going to play a 10, is he? So
no,
that's the decision he really needs to get right, because you're going to F it up majorly if you continue to think about what you're going to play in each game. Suddenly you've played 10 games and won 3. It isn't good. And I don't mean to sound negative. I'm just openly frustrated with the performance on Tuesday, because we went back to square one of Exeter, and arguably worse than Exeter. And Stevenage, there was moments of greatness, but some stupidity as well. And I don't want to see a repeat of that Saturday. And I think Bruce, I do trust him still, but there will be question marks in a few games if we're struggling to even pick up a shot on target again, because it will just dwindle out, won't it? It will go from expectation just to not wanting to watch games again, which we definitely don't want. And I think Bruce will get it right. I think we've got a lot of quality to come back, and he said we're not quite finished yet in the window. But we just got to get the next few signings correct. If he wants a left back, play a left back. But what I don't like is playing. I don't mean to go back on myself, but he's playing an injured Coulson predominantly this season over Ashworth rather than just letting him recover. You know, he's playing Brown at right back instead of a right back. He needs to get his team how he wants it. And now he doesn't really know what formation to play, and we don't know how to get set pieces right. So there are massive alarm bells already. But as you say, away from home, where we were so strong last season, Saturday is ginormous in the sense of we need some identity on the pitch.
It doesn't matter who the manager is, whoever you are, whatever club you're at. If you've invested money and you put in performances like we have done particularly against Exeter and on Tuesday night, you haven't got an infinite number of those in the bank before people will ask questions. So there's got to be a progression, hasn't there? That's what we all want to see. You know, do you remember the years ago under Grace in the Carlisle game? We were on a bit of a bad run. We lost 2-0, but everybody went, it's the most famous game we lost, I think, in recent history, where everyone went, yeah, I can see what they're trying to do. Then after that, players bought into it and Houlihan hit the ground running, and we just had a really good run and we were brilliant. That's what we needs to. And I thought that might have been the Huddersfield game, where you go, right, okay, it's clicked. And I know it's early season, but you have to see some sort of progression where you think, well, all right, we lost 1-0, but like against Leyton Orient last season, but we peppered the goal and we're very unlucky. But if you're churning out performances like Tuesday night, you don't see any green shoots of recovery with the consistency, do you? You just don't. You think, but he hasn't got 4 or 5 of those in the locker between now and say October.
Not that type of performance.
No, not that type of performance. No, it's not so much the scoreline; it's how we went about it. So, but also equally, he's more than capable of getting us sorted and turning it around. And I really hope it starts on Saturday, because I don't want another change of manager. You know, I have said in the podcast that people have like Dan, if you're listening, Dan's like, oh, Martin wanted him out. I don't want him out now. I actually don't want him out now. I really don't, because of all the.
You want him out after Saturday?
Well, yeah, God, fucking hell, give him another day, a couple of days. No, seriously, I don't. But all I'm saying is that it doesn't matter who you are. Even Pep Guardiola got pelters last season because City weren't where they're supposed to be. You don't have infinite credit in the bank, do you? So it's either got to improve or something will change. But like you've said, I think that if it ever got to that point, he would say, actually, I need to. He doesn't want to be sacked by Blackpool, does he? Not with a manager who's 64 with 1,000 games under his belt. That's not a good look.
I think he'd just have respect for himself more.
Yeah,
but I hope the club and just say it's not worked. But
don't want another reset.
I'll end it with this: it isn't going to come to that. It will come good, and I think with the quality that we do have, like you say, it might just take a while to click. But some of these players they signed have got to start playing to enable the team to start to tick.
They're letting him down as well in some examples, aren't they? Some players are really letting themselves down and the manager down and us down because they're not putting in consistent performances. So it's a collective. It's a collective.
I've gone against my word, and with this has continued way too long. I don't know how, if I'm honest, Martin, but probably too long to talk about the Huddersfield game. But we'll go through the team on Saturday. I'm going to go with who we think is going to play, not what we want, because I think Peacock Farrell naturally is going to be in. And I think the biggest question is Imre going to be at right back? I personally think it's a resounding yes.
Yes.
Because I think he was running around Tuesday night, strapped up nonetheless for protection, but I think he was showing he's ready to play at least 60 minutes.
Yeah, he's trained all week, so he should be playing, I think.
Centre-backs make up themselves with Heckway and Casey. Left back, he will probably go with Coulson because he still not played Ashworth. And Coulson was superb to the ridiculous on Tuesday. I thought he was probably his worst game for Blackpool. I like Coulson. But he'll probably be back for Saturday. And I would like to see 2 traditional left and right wingers. So I'd like to see Hansen and Eboué. Sorry if I got his name wrong again.
I think it's Eboué.
Eboué, sorry. And I'd like to see Honeyman, and I'd like to see Honeyman and Brown. I think we're going to see Honeyman. I don't know. That's probably a good question, because if he goes 4-4-2, is he going to play Morgan?
Yeah, exactly. For me, Brown's got to play because we've been crying out for that kind of midfielder, and he's shown in flashes what he can do, but he can't do it right back. So he needs to play because he's the only person who can really get his foot in. Well, Honeyman can, but do you know what I mean? Brown's got a bit more athleticism about him, and he has to play for me. But he won't drop Evans because he scored the other day, and he's I don't know. It's a quandary, isn't it? Doesn't really lend itself to the midfield. Doesn't lend itself to 4-4-2, but then the wingers don't lend themselves to anything else. So
yeah, I would. Yeah, what maybe we should do what we like to see. I would like to see a 4-3-3 with that defense.
Me too.
He probably will go with Honeyman out wide if he goes to a 4-4-2, and then maybe move Bloxham up front. That's probably my argument. He might go Hansen, Honeyman, Brown, and Evans, and then Brown and I don't know. No, I don't know. Maybe Brown at right back because he's not gonna. No, because Imre's in.
Said about
I can't do this part, and that's why I'm not a manager.
No, but Bloxham. Do you not think he? I mean, I know it's frustrating, but on Tuesday night he seemed to spend most of his time just trying to wind the opposition up. Rather,
he was rattled. He was
rattled, wasn't he? But is it a shoo-in that he starts? I don't know if it is.
I think he has to start
up front. Yeah.
For me, he has to.
He
can't.
Yeah.
Dale Taylor cannot play by himself.
No, he can't
anymore.
No.
So unless he's going to go Bondo, or unless we sign someone tomorrow that's ready to play, he has. For me, he has to go Dale Taylor. Maybe he goes Honeyman on the right, and then Evans and Brown in the middle.
Yeah.
Hansen on the left, and then Bloxham and Taylor up front. I don't think. I just don't think we can do 4-5-1 or 4-1-4-1, whatever we played last time. So I'll end them on. I said we're going to pick the team. We haven't, and I'll put a team out on Friday because I can't make up my mind right now, and it's later than we expected. So, thanks, Martin. An hour and a half, way longer. Mike Rob said, "Billy, wait up front with Taylor." Don't see it happening, but it can't get worse. It can't get much worse than Tuesday. But we'll end it there.
I'll just say as well, just really quickly, not that I'm just so happy to see Morecambe in the position they're in. Just really quickly, what they were a couple of days from going under, and isn't it great to see that they've survived and that they're I know that they've lost Billy Waite to us, but they'll move on from that and we'll look after him. But I'm so glad that Morecambe did get saved, because it's just horrendous to see another club, especially down the road, in deep shit and on the verge of extinction. So thank God they survived. That we moan about our selection and results, but I wouldn't have liked to have been a Morecambe fan waking up with no football to play the other week. So I'm just happy they were saved. Just wanted to end on that.
No, I completely agree, mate. Right, buddy, I'm going to end it there. Right. Way longer than I wanted to. Sorry, or you're welcome, depending on if you like long podcasts or not. Yeah, a good discussion point, but we'll put out a team on Friday and we'll try and make up our mind as a podcast group and see what we think we would go with rather than what we probably think Bruce is going to go with, because that's a lot easier. But Martin, thank you. And we'll be back to discuss this game at midpoint next week. With no midweek game, it will probably be Tuesday or Wednesday. And hopefully we're celebrating 3 points for Steve Bruce's side. Thanks again, Martin.
Cheers. Yeah, all the best to anyone going to Plymouth.
Yeah, safe travels for anyone on Saturday. And thanks for everyone getting involved in the chat. We'll see you again soon.